and welcome back to Trailblazer MTG. My name is Paul, or Prop, and we have an exciting video this week. If you watched to the end of my previous video, we will be watching and commentating over the grand final of the May Discord Asynchronous League. I was able to get recordings from each of the participants, and so we should be able to watch the match and talk about the plays and how things are going between these two decks. But the first thing I want to do is talk about the decks that are being played in this match. So, first up, we're going to talk about a 900 IQ Monkeys medium blue. So this is a kind of aggressive blue tempo deck. Has a lot of evasive, difficult to deal with threats, or threats that can grow. Ascendant Spirit, you can put mana into to make it bigger. Obviously, Mockingbird, a really useful card that can put that can become a copy of whatever you want. Bellion, a really useful kind of aggressive 2/2 that is also a land and Ramshu. Makti and Hitler to control the board slightly. We have sort of the classic Ledger Shredder, Abhorrent Oculus, Flood Pitch Drowner. We have the new Emeritus of Ideation as some of the higher end. We have like 5 mana, this Mesmerizing Benthid, the Riddler, Meringue River Regent. So a suite of very good value creatures that can disrupt and be threats on their own. That also, between things like Sea Dasher, Suspicious Stowaway, and other cards, will also maintain your card advantage when you attack with them. Very limited number of sorceries. This is just we have Sleep of the Dead, Sleight of Hand, card selection, a tap down spell that you can recast from the graveyard. Charter Course, obviously a very good draw spell in a tempo deck, in the more aggressive tempo deck that wants to attack fairly regularly. Winged Words, there's a lot of flyers in this deck, so this is often just 2 mana, draw 2 cards. Again, really good rate, even for a sorcery. We then have the instants. Obviously, a lot of permission, a lot of counter spells. We also have tempo, we have bounce, card selection, consider and opt. So by the back, a really good protection spell that can also blank a blocker for a key attacking turn. Spell Pierce, Spell Snare, all the kind of standard or like expected, most efficient counter spells. Longest Pull's probably the closest they have to a hard counter. Most of the rest are soft permission. Because again, this is more of a tempo deck than it is a control deck. We also have Cryptic Coat, really good, able to get multiple creatures into play for a reasonable value, and gives them protection. We have some of the curiosity effects. Obviously, Stormchaser's Talent, a really powerful card, gives you 1/1 prowess otters. Enable Scream, another control-y lockdown value creature. Profts, again, if you're drawing cards, is very powerful, and a way of making the creatures you do have much bigger, much harder to deal with. Then at the lands, a couple of fetch lands, a couple of creature lands, Faceless Haven and Hall of the Storm Giants, the demo field, the Field of Ruin, 2 on-color Surveils, just to give you some card selection in the late game. Agni Killer and Castle Vantress, really powerful, just blue mana sinks for later in the game. And then, of course, a density of Snow-Covered Islands. Obviously, we're looking at 20. It's a fairly low land count because the mana cost of this deck is fairly low and also has a lot of cantrips to get you to the cards you want. There is a module dual-faced land, which is the Jwari Disruption, and obviously Bellion is another land equivalent in the deck. So yeah, it's fairly low to the ground. It can go later. It has plenty of ways to control the board, either go wide, get decent amount of card advantage, get fairly big between the Djinn or the Illuge. Total the parent having equal the number of islands, which when the deck is mostly islands, very useful. And it also discounts your instants and sorceries. So, yep, that's the first deck we're looking at. And then in what might be a surprise to anyone, or no one really, I've got another blue base tempo deck as the other player. This one has green in there. It kind of works on the growth threat, being able to put counters on things a little more, while still being more of just a control-y, not as creature heavy, but still creature based plan. So obviously a lot of similarities here, but we have Spyglass for map tokens to put 1/1 counters on, Duelist of the Mind for committing crimes. We have the Skoos, Dragon's Guard Elite grows, Keen-Eyed Curator, Graveyard Hate that can also get very big. Deep-Root Champion, there's a lot of non-creatures, so really valuable there. Obviously Uro, really powerful, same as Oko, really powerful creatures and planeswalkers that can kind of warp the game around them. We also have Wistfulness, that is both a disenchant and a draw spell, and Hooting Mandrels, which, if you're filling your graveyard, is a 1 mana 4/4 trample. So pretty good rate. In the sorcery slot, we have Neoform, a way to upgrade some of your lower drops into more powerful, more valuable creatures. It's a really good way to get Abhorrent Oculus in play ahead of schedule. Just play a 2-drop and then sack it to go get the 3-drop 5/5 that just goes wide as hell. Also, some of the best cantrip options, Slight, Stock Up, and obviously Treasure Crew is really powerful. And then we get on to the instants. Again, you'll see some similarities between this and the previous deck, but this has a little more, probably a little more permission. We got Change the Equation. We have Cyclonic Rift, which is an overwhelming spell to be cast late in the game. We have some of the green base permission, like Quandrix Charm, Decisive Denial. We have some ways to blank items. So this can counter a spell. And it can also just make your guys bigger. We have Simic Charm, which can protect a creature, make it bigger, or bounce. Snake's Veil, another hexproof, make your creature bigger. Giant Growth makes a creature bigger. Become Immense makes your creature bigger, to be able to push through damage. Also, we see again the Cryptic Coat, the Enable to Screen the Eidetic Memory. Also, the Astrologian's Planisphere, with this amount of instants and sorceries and non-creature spells, can really create a really big threat fairly quickly. And then when we look at the lands, kind of what you would expect, a lot of green options. They have a couple of black options for the Deathrite Shaman activations. They have the Mistrise Village, which can, in a matchup like this, can make sure that you're able to resolve your spells or counter spells, similar to Mystic Sanctuary, being able to put islands, put really useful spells back on top of your library. Kishla Village is another way to fill your graveyard and also get some card selection. We also have Passing Say, which can be a way to generate creatures without casting spells. We know about Agna Kella, Beseju, and Otawara as bounce as utility like spell lands. The Lair of the Hydra, and all of the Storm Giants for creature lands. Also, Hall of Oracles and Great Hall of the Biblioplex, the 2 Strixhaven Rainbow lands. This great for instance and sorceries. Gives you rainbow, whatever color you need. and can make turn it into a creature to attack. And this can also pump your creatures, put counters on the creatures that you have. So as you can see, kind of all doing a very similar thing. We also are seeing both Field of Ruin, no Demolition Field in this one, but just the Field of Ruin. So yeah, I think one thing I will note, which is interesting, especially considering the ban discussion that's going to be coming up at the end of this league, is Bella is running Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time in their deck, whereas a 900 IQ Monkey is not playing either of those. Obviously, their deck is a little more aggressive, low to the ground, but I think considering that the only real cards they have that tax their graveyard are, they have the Oculus, Sleep of the Dead, and the Emeritus. But if you've got the Emeritus in play and you're re-preparing it, you're winning the game anyway. I think this is not likely to be an important graveyard tax ability, but there we go. But yeah, I think this should be a super interesting matchup, and I'm looking forward to bringing it to you with some commentary. Just a quick note, I don't believe that either player made any changes to their decks throughout the league. I think we kind of see that some of the decks that perform the best have been well repped, well tested, and already been kind of tuned before they go in. Although sometimes you'll go into a league and find that the meta or the suite of opponents you have might mean that a card that you have is not quite on rate or not quite doing enough if it's more of a general counter or a general toolbox. If there isn't a lot of targets for that toolbox, then sometimes it can be replaced with something a little more specific. So there we have it. Yeah, I will be back shortly with the start of the match, and I look forward to talking you through it. Okay, as we're about to get into the match, I just want to say a big thank you to both players for sharing the videos with me. I will note that I think Bella's video gets a little slow and choppy, so we will mostly be focusing on a 900 IQ Monkey's perspective. First up, we have mulligans. This is obviously a mulligan. There's one tapped green land. We're now seeing both players making their decision. Top we have Bella's 6, which I believe is going to be a keep. The options for 900 IQ Monkey, they have some permission, but not a lot of action, which being a bit more aggressive, I think they want a mulligan, and they do so. And they now get a 6, which I think is a bit closer to a keep. Obviously, not more lands than they would want, but I think they're probably going to keep this. Yep. And so now we'll get into the game. Obviously, fairly early turns. We have a Flitterwing Nuisance coming down, and drawing the opt first turn is actually very useful. The Vortex was probably not something they wanted to play immediately, and now they have they're able to keep mana up for the opt, and if they really need to, they can bounce with the Vortex. Okay, Bella developing a Duelist to the Mind, obviously really valuable in a deck that wants to commit quite a number of crimes. Just thinking about this Sleep of the Dead, deciding that it's not where they want to go, and they draw the Kraken. So now I think they just want to, they're just going to develop the Bellion. This allows them to keep up the Vortex. Actually the Vortex I believe is it is an instant, so they have that as an option. Okay, they're choosing to attack, getting for a quick 2. And with the Mistrized Village, they're able to develop Cryptic Coat. So obviously Bella off to a quick start, got three solid creatures on the board. To just this Bellion, which attacks fairly well, but is not as good on defense. We now have a Hedge Maze, tap land, so the decision here is, do we want to develop the Hedge Maze for the Surveil, or potentially have the draw from the Sea Dasher Octopus if the Bellion is unblocked? So obviously leaving 3 mana up allows them to decide what happens based on blocking. There's no blocks. Actually going to mutate here, which is going to make Bellion a little bigger. It being already unblocked, they know that they're going to get the draw. I think in this case, maybe playing the land pre-combat was not what they wanted to be doing. But they get the Agnicella. I think they're hoping probably not to draw much more land. On Bella's side, they got the Kishla Village, which currently comes in tapped. And they have this Neoform and Dig Through Time, which is they're fairly far away from doing anything with. So just swinging on in. Yep. Using the ability to ideally get three draws, but the Vortex is going to bounce the Duelist to reduce some card draw and slightly reduce the damage. Still get to draw 2 cards, and they hit an Oko and a Hedge Maze. So Hedge Maze comes down, they get the Surveil. As you can see, the video here is a little slow and choppy, which is why we're focusing on the other perspective mostly, but they see this wistfulness on top, and they decide that that's going to stay there. I think obviously they can either for 2 mana draw and discard, and if opponent plays a artifact or enchantment, they have the opportunity to remove it with the green mana. They've now hit the Reservoir Kraken, which is a 4-drop which opponents can choose to tap, but gives you a 1/1, an unblockable 1/1. But they have this Fluttering Gnosis that can attack in the air, so right now I don't think they're too concerned about this 6/6 Trampler. Another question is, are they going to replay the Duelist? They can develop the Wistfulness, they can even develop the Oko. Although the Oko is going to be a little vulnerable to the Kraken. They go for it anyway. They do have the 2 mana, which I believe was the wood cost, but they just develop a food token and play the Duelist in the mind. So now we have this Make Disappear in hand, which with 5 mana up, obviously we can see that the Wistfulness would be a great hit here, but Make Disappear not the best at this point of the game, especially if you don't have creatures on your side that you want to sacrifice. So they get the Agnicella, which comes in untapped, and they develop a 4/5, which comes with 2 O2s, so good blockers. You tap down the Kraken, give them an unblockable fish, and they choose to trade the, I believe that's a One-Sheet Tongue that was under the Cryptic Coat. Yep, for the Bellion, which I don't think Monkey is too worried about. Obviously, they do not particularly need the mana on their side of the board, and they have a significant board presence outside of that anyway. So now we've drawn the Great Hall of the Biblioplex, another land. I think Bella's deck is a little more land hungry, mana hungry, so they do have that option. They're going to play the Great Hall. use the coloured mana to pay the ward and turn this big 6/6 into an elk. Obviously, they make disappear. These aren't spells, so there's not as much use for them here. And they're going to pitch the Yavimaya. So right now, they are, yep, they're going to go to attacks. They have 4 in, excuse me, they have 4 in the air, and now they're going to neoform this Duelist of the Mind, and they can go get the big Oculus. Comes in as a 6/6, really big, and yeah, this puts them in a really strong position. Obviously, Monkey tapped out. They do not have the make disappear, and they would have needed. They could have sacrificed, obviously, their creatures, this 1/1 fish, in order to duplicate it. But I think that would be a big cost for this for blanking the neoform, and they obviously didn't keep the mana up. They decided to develop the Benthid on the previous turn. So now they're going to play this Hedge Maze that's been keeping in hand since fairly early in the game. Yep, they got to get rid of an island. This Haughty Djinn comes down. Not the biggest Haughty Djinn. They obviously don't have a ton of instant sorceries in their graveyard to pump it up. Yeah, they're probably worth just getting in with this fish. It can't be blocked, so it's free damage. Not the most useful blocker with all the air threats on the other side. And now we have a Cryptic Coat, which can come down again. They're able to Elk the Djinn, which gives them lethal in the air. Yeah, 8 damage, no blockers. Okay, I'm going to get straight into game 2 here. I think maybe a little land heavy on Monkey side, but I think reasonable keeps on both sides, especially with the Sleight of Hand as an early card selection, and the Faceless Haven, which can be a creature that can't be countered. Obviously, we have the Glenelendra Guardian, we have the Long Rivers Pull for a counterspell, and Slip Out the Back as protection on the other side. So, getting into the start of the game, we have Sleight of Hand. They decide to keep the Fading Hope. Things moving fairly quickly here. We got a Surveilled the Become Immense into the graveyard. We now have a JVP coming down on turn 2. And we have the Reservoir Kraken back again. So, yep, now they're able to use this Jace for some card selection. They have their protection, they have the ability to bounce. They draw a land, which is probably not what they're particularly looking for. They already have 4 lands, which is probably as much as they want in the early game, and they draw another land. So they're going to play the Faceless Haven and, yep, develop this 6/6 Kraken again. But I think this is going to run into, yep, this Long Rivers Pull, which is going to counter it. So, moving on. So Bella's next turn, they're now up to 4 mana. They certainly have some options with what they want to do with it. But they just pass it back. They have the Simic Charm. Jace draws another land. So being able to get through some of this, these lands on the top of the deck, very useful. And probably get one activation away from flipping Jace over, although not really a ton of options in terms of what could be used on the other side. But they're going to boot up this Faceless Haven. 4 damage is with Vigilance especially, is a significant threat. And trying to decide, I think, if they want to, activate Jace on their turn so that he flips. They do have the Fading Hope for protection, which is very funny that they were thinking about Fading Hoping their own Jace, and opponent is bouncing Jace for them rather than trying to kill it. But that's kind of a lot of the tempo plays in both of these decks are bounces more than they are kill spells, right? So now they have a decision. They obviously, at this point, they may want to get an extra. They may want to get up to the extra land. So Storm Chaser's talent, maybe not quite as powerful if it's not coming down on turn 1 or 2. So pitch the Storm Chaser's talent and redevelop the Jace. So right now they've got still got this Jace against an empty board. Bella gets this multiversal passage down as a Greenland, as a forest, and again just holding up their mana. So now Monkey has a decision. They obviously have the mana to get the draw spell with this Regent, but they also have the mana in hand to try and develop it as a threat for 6 mana. So I think, their first decision is going to be just boot up the Faceless Haven again, continue to use this slow start from Bella to put pressure on. Fading Hope is going to push it back to their hand, which, again, not the end of the world, although I think they already played their land this turn, so they can't redevelop the Haven, which is a little awkward. Will slow them down. I wasn't able to see the scry. The video was just a little too hitchy. And now they're going to attempt. They got this slip out the back. Oh, I see. They left a sleight of hand on top. Jace has now been phased out. And so another turn cycle goes around without him flipping, and now we have the Glenelendra, which is a very good way of countering a non-creature spell. They decide to let her be bounced, especially considering she has flash, and they scryed to the bottom another island. Now again, opponent resolving a sleight of hand. We're not going to be able to see what the options were, again, with the video hitching. But we do see that they got a Duelist of the Mind out of it, and so they were able to develop that. So now, at this point, we believe we might finally, at the third attempt, see a Jace flip. I think an interesting call here to discard the Sleep of the Dead. Obviously, they have plenty of lands in play, and they could have just had it in hand as a 1-mana tap down. But instead they decided to pitch it so it's available in the graveyard for its escape cost. They're going to shrink the Duelist and then just chill. Obviously not a ton of threat being posed with a -1. That need to be made significantly bigger with potentially Profts or the mutation. But for now, it seems like Bella's just content to sit with what they have. Go into attacks, and just passing the game back. So now hit this Field of Ruin, which obviously the Mistral Village in a countery kind of matchup is a very powerful way to make sure your spells resolve, but the Field of Ruin can deal with that. They don't develop it immediately. They want to come in with this Faceless Haven, continue to push damage. I believe that puts Bella to 10. We should see that shortly on the upper video. Again, Jace just ticking up, shrinking the duelist. And now, end of turn, using the Mistrized Village to ensure that their Glenlander Guardian can resolve. So, yep, Glenlander Guardian coming at Jace, trying to whittle down some of these loyalty counters. Bring him down to 5. Interesting dichotomy. They could have tried to slip out the back. It would have turned off the counter by removing the -1/-1 counter, but they could have paid 3 to counter it anyway, so interesting decision point there. So they're now going to try and develop this Meringue River region, but as you can see, Bella drew a change the equation, which I believe is able to counter this spell. I'm not fully familiar with change the equation as a spell. Obviously using Mistrized Village here to make sure that whatever they cast can't be countered. And then, okay, using Repulsive Mutation, which will, once we see the the Duelist to the Mind Trigger resolve, makes the Glenlander bigger and counters the spell. So now we have an opt, another island gets scryed to the bottom, and the Flooded Strand. Monkey has been flooding fairly significantly, which is why they've decided to use the Sleight of Hand. Cantrip or another land is the choice. So again, they take the cantrip. I think they're really looking for something that can provide a little more aggression. They now have the +1/+1 counter on the Glenlander, which reactivates the ability to turn to counter a spell, a non-creature spell. Just for a moment, I turned off the Bella's point of view just because the video was getting so choppy it was becoming not really useful as an option. We also see Hooting Mandrills come down for 1 mana, exiling cards in the graveyard. So now we have a 4/4 flyer, a 4/5 flyer, sorry, a 4/4 trample, and a 0/3 flying vigilance that is attacks as a 1 or a 2. For Monkey, they have some options. So yeah, they're going to use the mana from the Faceless Haven as colorless and finally get rid of this Mistrized Village, which has been causing them some issues with the uncounterable spells. And now we get Bella's POV back and see that they drew a Floodpit's Drowner, and on top, I believe that's a Spell Snare. So Monkey very much in an interesting decision point. Obviously, opponent has 3 cards in hand. They know what the top card of their library is, so decides to Surge Engine, and then gets changed the equation. but they're able to use the Phantom Interference because they only have 1 mana available. So what they're going to draw here, I believe, is the Spell Snare. Okay. So it looks like they pitched the Flood Pitch Drowner. They're now going to bounce the Duelist of the Mind. Sorry, bounce the Surge Engine with the Duelist of the Mind trigger. So the question is, with 3 mana available, they could fetch for a Surveil, then consider, and then decide whether they want to slip out the back, or they could just try and slip out the back to protect this. So yeah, they can also level up the Surge Engine before they slip out the back, so that to use the mana that they have more efficiently. Some interesting options for how to respond to this into the Floodmoor. They probably want to protect it. It is really their only threat at the moment. So first up, they decide to sack the Flooded Strand. They go to get the Snookered Island, so they don't get the Hedge Maze, the Surveil land, but this allows them to level up the Surge Engine and slip out the back. So this will make it bigger, phase it out, which means that they are kind of shields down in terms of defense. They can use the Glenelendra Guardian, to counter the slip out the back, which will allow them to draw a card. So we'll see what the card draw gets them. Decide to Surveil first. Obviously, dig a little deeper. The Curiosity, not quite what they need. They do find the Unable to Scream, which will hopefully slow down their opponent. And finally, the Into the Floodmoor resolves and bounces the Surge Engine back to hand. So now they reapply the +1/+1 counters plus extra onto Glenelendra Guardian, and at this point, looks like Monkey is in a pretty rough spot. We're looking at they have 15, 17 damage represented across 4 creatures. However, that draw will do a lot. Obviously now Bella is hellbent. There is nothing left in their hand. So this Mockingbird can easily become a copy of the Oculus. For 3 mana, you just get your own copy that doesn't have to exile anything from your graveyard. They also have the Sleep to tap it down. They have this Unable to Scream to turn things off. So looks like they're deciding to go with the Unable to Scream first, which is interesting, and I think you'll. So now, looking to cast the Mockingbird, and as you can see here, they are unsure about this interaction. The unstable mutation, the unable to scream, changes the properties of the creature. But now the copy that they make is a copy of the original that does not have the enchantment, which is what was modifying the creature type. So they get a standard 5/5 Oculus. And with opponent tapped out, they do now have multiple options. They can boot up the Haven, they can replay the Surge Engine, they have the Sleep of the Dead online to lock down the Glenelendra Guardian. But so that's what they decide to. That's what they decide to do. Obviously, three cards from the graveyard at this point of the game. Fairly low additional cost, as with the 3 mana. So now they get a Manifest Dread. Neither are creatures, but that's not the biggest issue. Bella drew a 2-sided land, and so had decided to put the green side, I believe Bark Channel Pathway, up. So now for an additional 3 mana, they can make this into a 5/4 and swing in, which is able to finish Bella off. So after that grand finish, we're getting into game 3. Both opponents having a fairly low initial land count, but looks like Bella's going to keep with the Willow Rush Verge, and Monkey going to keep 2. So a quick initial turns. We have an early Suspicious Stowaway coming down. Opt on response. They're going to bottom the Wan-Shi Tong. Oh, sorry, they're thinking about it. Okay, they can commit to to bottoming. And now they get into the Royal. Drawing a Jawari Disruption could be useful. Obviously, it could be a counterspell, but they decide dueling unblockable 1/1s between the Stowaway and the Hallkeeper. Stowaway comes in, they get Wooded Foothills, and decide to discard. Let's see. They actually decide to pitch an island, develop the Wooded Foothills, and pass the turn back. Obviously, the Floodpit Drowner has flash, so it can come in. Yep, it's going to come in actually during upkeep, which is an interesting component. They were also able to pass without playing a spell, so we got the Werewolf flip now as it is now nighttime. Monkey decides that the Floodpit Drowner probably better to spend the mana now to counter it. They can play the Disruption. So interestingly, they attack with the Hall Creeper. They draw a card. They drew a 2-drop, which is for the best. But if they'd drawn a 1-mana spell, they may have regretted playing the Ruins pre-combat. Meanwhile, end of turn, Bella gets a Hedge Maze and decides that the Passing Say is actually what they want to draw. I think obviously it's going to be coming in tapped. They don't have a basic, but they are able to to develop mana, and now they hit off the werewolf draw. They hit Uro, which allows them to draw another card, which in this case was the Glenalendra Guardian. So now on Monkey's turn, they develop a Ledger Shredder. This is actually a very good interaction. At 4 mana, they get the Ledger Shredder, they get the Connive trigger off the casting of the Eidetic Memory. They then get the draw trigger off of the Proft, and now they can put 2 counters on one of their creatures. They get to do it on the Hall Creeper, which they can now put a further 2 counters, which makes it an unblockable 5/5, which is very powerful. Again, also 2 spells were cast, so it becomes day again. The Stowaway goes back, still gets to swing in. They get the loot. So it looks like they trying to decide what to pitch. They pitch the Deathrite Shaman and play the Kishla Village, which comes in untapped because they control an island. And they have 4 flash options plus this stock up. Obviously considering whether to stock up on their own turn, which looks like they are deciding to do. Yep, they decide to stock up. Lets them see 5 cards, pick 2. Again, a little bit hitchy on their side, but looks like they are picking the Oko and the Fading Hope. Fading Hope really good against the Silent Hall Creeper, especially now that it's been a couple of turns in and has been grown up. So they get to turn the Ledger Shredder off with the Unable to Scream. It does give Monkey a draw, but they do not have any mana up for this Slip Out the Back. And then they can Fading Hope the Hall Creeper and get a Scry. Decide this Dragon Guard Elite isn't where they need to be. They have a couple of really good creatures in hand, plus the Uro in the graveyard. So they are in a reasonable position in terms of their the overall match. Now back with Monkey's perspective. They do have this Tidebinder, which is very useful. And they are 1 mana away from this Emeritus. Obviously, opponent has a couple of counter options in hand, but if they're able to resolve the Emeritus, that is a great way to build back in and potentially take over a game. They play the Hedge Maze. They decide to scry the Delta or surveil the Delta, or they are considering it. Interesting decision point, obviously, with the Hall of the Storm Giants also being a tapped land. They replay out the Hall Creeper. They have this Slip Out the Back as a protection spell. And we see Bella gets the Cryptic Coke back again. Stowaway trigger, they get the loot, they find a Malcolm. And they decide that the coat isn't where they want to be at this point, so I think that's perfectly fine. I think the Malcolm, like, having all of these instant speed options in hand is very, very useful. It allows them to just pass, let the werewolf flip. And now they have the option to potentially trade, deal with the Ledger Shredder. Although life totals fairly similar, not an extreme amount of pressure in either direction really at this point. So we now see the Illuge in hand. Very useful creature, can be fairly large. Obviously, only 3 islands in play for Monkey, which does make the Illuge a little less, a little more underwhelming. So at this 5 mana, they have the instant speed Tidebinder. They could try and develop the Emeritus, but right now they're not under a ton of pressure. But as with the Malcolm coming down, potentially a bait, trying to see if anything comes, and then because that was not countered, they try and cast the Glenelendra Guardian. Obviously, if they're a soft permission, they probably wouldn't have minded the Guardian being countered. So, but now they have essentially 6 unblockable power coming in, which threatens to overwhelm Monkey's side of the board with the options that they have. They decide they want to pitch the Wan Shi Tong. It's a little bit heavy on the mana intensity, and they have other really strong spells in hand and enough pressure kind of on the board already to not cause them too many issues. This allows them to develop the Lockmare, which can tap down a blocker or just be used to draw some cards. Monkey now trying to decide should they cast this Tidebinder on end step for no value. Obviously, they are under pressure. The Tidebinder doesn't really block unless it's able to turn the flying off from one of these using one of these activate abilities. So at this point, I believe they could use the Castle Vantress to scry, but that also, with 4 mana still available on their opponent's side, does leave them a little shields down in case opponent has any other end step shenanigans. Also, they have the Coil and Catch, again 4 mana to draw, discard, but they are very much under pressure here. They kind of need to find an answer. Being able to cast the Regent and have the Meringue River Regent have it stick would allow them to bounce a couple of opponents' options. However, we know that between the Phantom Interference and the Syncopate, they don't really have a way of... it's unlikely that this Regent is going to resolve. Yep, they also have the Emeritus, but again, into this open mana, they do not have the additional mana available in order to ensure that either of these resolve. So this is a really tough decision point. They really kind of need flyers to slow down the pressure. Those flyers can get tapped down by the Lockmare. So they decide go looking for different answers, casting this Coil and Catch. Question is, does Bella decide to counter it? Obviously countering this leaves them open on their turn to potentially develop this Emeritus, which would be very, very good. So instead they allow it to resolve, gives them some options for the future. So they got this Spectral Restitching, which is a temporary exile for X number of creatures. Alright, so they got this Bellion as well. Not sure that that's going to quite provide the value they need. I think at this point they kind of need to resolve either the Emeritus or the Oculus. Obviously they don't quite have the mana to do both, but they do have the Tidebinder available as a way to potentially prevent the Glenelendra Guardian from countering a potential protection spell. Obviously the Lockmare can tap down the Oculus. So, yeah, first up they're just going to attack with the Hall Creeper. They can't draw a card off this, but they can put counters on it, make it a little bigger. Yep, they're going to try and resolve this Oculus. Obviously, they only had 5 cards in the graveyard. Or 6 cards in the graveyard, sorry. So they had to exile their entire graveyard to do so. Opponent can demand they pay 3 extra for this, which they can afford. So they let the Oculus respond. Between the Lockmare tap down and the flyers that they have, they are in a reasonable position. They can also use this Phantom Interference to get a 3rd flyer, which provides 6 power in the air, which actually puts the 8 power coming in. So they use the Cyclonic Rift. This is a real backbreaker. Obviously returns the non-land permanent. They were only able to cast the Oculus because they had 6 cards in their graveyard. So this was done on end step. So now if they phase their own Oculus out, which again they can't really counter with the counterspell options they have in hand, but the Oculus is now going to phase out and will not phase back in because it was done on end step. Will not phase back in until Monkey's next turn. So right now they have we have this Lockmare, making it bigger to draw a card, take one of the -1/-1 counters off of it. Still leaves 2, which are able to tap down a blocker, which right now Monkey only has 1 blocker, and they are threatening 8 damage, potentially 10 damage if the counters come off the Lockmare. They also have the Tidebinder. So with the X equals 2, they are deciding they get to exile 2 of their creatures, which will come back at the end of Bella's turn. So that gets them off the board. They still get to draw the card. They drew a sleight of hand, and they now also have a get out. So they get in for another 3, bringing Monkey down to 6. Yep, at this stage of the game, Syncopate not going to be the most powerful option. And they also decide that the Phantom Interference is a good option to remove. So they're now going to exile some cards to escape this Uro. Obviously already really big, powerful creature. It can't deal with the Oculus once it phases back in. However, it does allow... it does present quite a lot of pressure, and again, the 3 life gain is actually nothing to sniff at. So back to Monkey's turn. They're kind of in a similar situation as they were before. Opponent has 2 mana. They do have significantly more mana available. They would be able to cast Emeritus of Ideation and hold 3 mana up, which deals with most permission. Although the Make Disappear can ask them to pay 4 extra with the with sacrificing the Stowaway or another creature, but probably the Stowaway, as it's the least impactful, even with its unblockable ability. Obviously, another difficult turn. Bella is potentially presenting lethal. They have 4 in the air plus an unblockable 1, that's 5 damage, and the ability to tap down a creature with the Lockmare. So here we go. They are able to cast the Get Out, which counters the Emeritus, one of the few high counter spells for creatures. So now they're able to use the Hawk Reaper to get an extra Oculus, which gives them 2 Manifest triggers on their turn. Neither of those is a creature, which is not the most useful. And neither of those. So a little bit of a whiff. Obviously, the 2/2s do gum the ground up fairly well. So, opening with a sleight of hand. Quantum Riddler is a very good card. Obviously, at this point, they're fairly well ahead of the game. So they're going to remove 2 counters, tap down the Oculus. Which is going to draw the Tishana's Tidebinder, which makes sense. Opponent is now tapped, so Monkey's now tapped out. So they're going to make disappear on the Tishana's Tidebinder, which will counter it, which will make sure that the Oculus is tapped down. They're also going to sacrifice the Lockmare to make a copy of the Make Disappear, and this is a phenomenally heads-up play. Incredible. So the second copy, they are going to actually use the Glenlandra Guardian's ability to counter their own copy of Make Disappear, which will remove a counter from Glenlandra Guardian, tap down the only flying blocker, and now they have 6 unblockable damage. That is an incredible finish to an incredible game, and that's going to be it. Honestly, an incredible final. I'm really glad I got to watch this whole thing and share it with you, especially that play at the end to close the game out. And that will be the end of the May Asynchronous League. It's been a long video, so I won't keep you any longer. I just want to say thank you for watching. If you like this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and join. Please, I implore every time, join the Discord. Come play this game. There's some really fun interactions that you get to have with this format. Some really cool decks out there flying around. So with that, thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.